We have a history that supersedes music.
Allegedly a romantical thing. It's all right. I'll say alleged, but we know. Yeah, she hit it before Beyonce.
When Jay and I was in there doing basketball boys, you can't tell me Jay didn't see a 14-year-old girl come in the studio and shit on R.
Wendy Williams has never been afraid to speak the unspoken. But this time, what she said might have cracked the final seal on a decade-old secret. Jay-Z and Foxy Brown, in a relationship that didn't just blur the lines of mentorship, it may have destroyed her career.
It's something that we kind of already thought about anyway, because, you know, Foxy and Jay-Z worked together.
You and now, with a memoir on the way and old clips resurfacing, the industry's dirtiest whispers are finally turning into full-blown allegations.
Lawsuit accuses him. Girl with Sean Diddy Combs at a house party more than 2 decades ago.
Foxy vanished when she was on top of the world. Why is Jay-Z still dodging questions about the early days of her rise? And what does Diddy have to do with any of this? Because the deeper you dig into this story, the more it starts to look like Wendy wasn't being messy this time. She was being honest. Before the scandal, before the industry politics, before the drama, there was just a teenage girl from Brooklyn with a once-in-a-generation voice. Foxy Brown, born Inga DeCarlo Fung Marshing, came from a uniquely rich heritage Afro-Indo and Chinese Trinidadian roots all wrapped in one fierce New York flow. Raised in Park Slope, she wasn't born into privilege, but talent. She had that in abundance. By the time she was 14, she was already catching attention, not in a casual this kid has potential way, but in a way that made grown industry men stop and take notice. One night in 1994, Foxy's life changed. At a local talent show, she freestyled her way into hip-hop history. Sitting in the crowd were producers Tone and Poke. Yes, the same masterminds behind LL Cool J's Mr. Smith album. They heard her, saw her presence, and immediately threw her on a track. That track was the remix to I Shot Ya. When LL Cool J heard it, he thought it was a male rapper spitting fire. That's how raw her energy was. When he found out it was a teenage girl, it was a rap. She was kept on the record. Foxy Brown was officially in. From there, it was like lightning in a bottle. In 1996, before she even turned 18, Foxy was featured on everything. Toni Braxton's You're Mackin' Me High remix, Case's Touch Me, Tease Me, and most iconically, Jay-Z's Ain't No N**********. That last one is the key, because that was the record that didn't just make them stars, it tied them together. That duet had chemistry, that flirtatious, cool-kid-on-the block kind of chemistry. But it wasn't just music. Behind the scenes, rumors swirled. Wendy Williams wasn't the first to say it, but she might have been the first to say it loud.
Allegedly a romantical thing. It's all right. I'll say alleged, but we know. Yeah, she hit it before Beyonce.
People laughed, but it wasn't a joke too. Foxy back then, she was Jay-Z, was 27. It started with a verse, then came the chemistry, and for a few years it looked like Jay-Z and Foxy Brown were inseparable professionally, maybe even personally. The hit records, the appearances, the cosigns, they made each other look untouchable. Then just like that, the mentorship ended, the collab stopped, Jay-Z moved on, and Foxy started to disappear at first. It looked like normal industry drama, maybe creative differences, maybe her beef with Lil' Kim. But that's not the full story, because this wasn't just about music, this was about control. Around 2003, Foxy started hinting at what really happened in her diss track. Let know she WPPED. She wasn't being subtle, she was exposing everything. And instead of fighting back, Jay-Z stayed silent. He didn't respond in the booth, he didn't deny it, he just stepped back, and that's when the blacklisting began. Suddenly, Foxy's projects started getting shelved. Her album Il Na Na to the Fever was cancelled. Her label moves got complicated. She started calling out execs Lorico and Diddy and publicly blaming them for blocking her career. But here's what nobody was saying out loud. Jay-Z wasn't protecting her anymore. There were whispers that she had too much dirt on him, that she knew about the under. He rumors the private life, the real Jay-Z behind the business, mogul mask, and for someone like Jay who built an empire on silence and image control, that was a problem, a big one. Industry insiders say he started working behind the scenes, pulling favors, making sure Foxy couldn't get traction, allegedly paying her off, locking her into non-disclosure agreements, trying to keep everything buried, because if Foxy talked, if she really talked, it wouldn't just ruin his name. It could tie him to others, to people like Diddy, and that's where the silence starts. To make sense, Foxy didn't just fall off, she was shut down, blocked, buried by the same men who once called her family. Now, if Foxy Brown was just another artist with a grudge, the industry would have moved on, but what makes her story dangerous is that it doesn't stop with Jay-Z. It pulls in another giant one who's currently watching his empire burn in real time. Sean Diddy Combs to understand why Foxy's silence matters so much. You have to look at the company she kept in the 9 South and early 2000s. Foxy wasn't just moving in music circles. She was sitting next to the most powerful men in the game. Jay-Z was her collaborator, Diddy was her supporter. These weren't just co-workers, these were gatekeepers, kings, and Foxy, she was the princess. With the loaded memory at the time, people didn't think too much of it, but now in the context of what's happening to Diddy, the raids, the lawsuits, the allegations, her words hit differently because what Foxy knew about Jay-Z, there's a good chance she knew about Diddy too, and here's where the two men's stories begin to blur. Foxy wasn't just known for her music, she was known for disappearing. One minute she was on top of the charts, the next she was gone, but when you look closely, her vanishing act lines up perfectly with the moments she tried to speak out. There were rumors about AS Tape 1 that allegedly featured Foxy, Jay-Z, and Jamie Foxx. There were whispers that Jay forced her into signing multiple NDAs. But what got buried in the noise was the speculation that Diddy may have known about the tape, or even helped keep it out of the public eye. In this industry, secrets are currency. And Foxy, she was holding a fortune, but instead of cashing in, she vanished not because she wanted to, but because the men she once trusted allegedly made sure she had no choice. And now with Diddy under fire for everything from street to drug use to violence, it's impossible not to ask, did Foxy know? March 25, 2024? Federal agents raid Diddy's mansions. In LA and Miami, they find weapons, seize phones, and confirm what the internet had already suspected. That Diddy's carefully crafted image was covering up something darker. Several lawsuits follow accusations of SAing of NDAs and hush money. The same patterns that Foxy hinted at in her past
lawsuit filed by R&B singer Cassie.
Cassie describing the music mogul as a vicious, cruel, and controlling man.
Her silence doesn't look like retreat, it looks like survival. Because here's what they never want you to realize. Jay-Z and Diddy have protected each other for decades. From business deals to award shows to carefully curated public images, they've moved as a unit. So, if Foxy knew something about one of them, there's every reason to believe she knew something about both. And maybe that's why Wendy Williams struck such a nerve when she spoke up. Because if Foxy ever decides to really talk, no gag orders, no filters, no deals, it's not just Jay-Z who has something to lose. It's the whole circle. But before we ever understood the danger she posed to them, we needed to understand what they had already done to her. By the time most people realized Foxy Brown was missing from the spotlight, she had already been through hell. On the surface, it was easy to write her off as just another troubled artist. The media painted her as wild, erratic, a diva with too many outbursts and not enough discipline. But that wasn't the full story. It never is. Because what the headlines ignored and what Foxy was too afraid to say out loud was that she wasn't just unraveling on her own. She was breaking under pressure. Real pressure. The kind that comes when you're a teenage girl with grown men controlling your image, your career, and maybe even your body. Foxy never spoke about what happened in a neat, press release kind of way. But her life told the story for her. In 2000, she checked herself into Cornell University Medical College, not for publicity, not for a brand reboot. She was addicted to opioids. She admitted she couldn't even record music or perform without morphine. This wasn't about partying, it was about coping, and the timeline is revealing. Foxy started falling apart right after she was allegedly blacklisted, right after her ties with Jay-Z and Diddy began to sour, right after the projects stopped, right after the support disappeared. The very people who once boosted her career now pretended she didn't exist. And then came the grief. In 2001, her uncle died in the American Airlines Flight 587 crash, a horrific tragedy that shook her family to the core. Already battling addiction and depression, the loss sent her spiraling even further. Not long after, she started missing tour dates, canceling shows, disappearing for months. Then her health took a brutal turn. In 2005, she suffered sudden and severe hearing loss. For over a year, she had to wear a hearing aid, communicate by touch, and figure out how to stay in the music game when she could barely hear the beats. But Foxy didn't quit. In 2006, after surgery restored some of her hearing, she tried to come back. She recorded Black Roses, re-signed to Def Jam under Jay-Z's leadership, and announced a fresh start. But the album never dropped. Despite regaining her voice, she couldn't escape the shadow hanging over her. The business had moved on. People who once called her Lil Sis now acted like she was a liability. And maybe she was, because by then, Foxy wasn't just a rapper trying to get back in the game.